What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. We are starting our maintenance 20K maintenance video with part 1, and it's going to include plugs and a cabin filter. Like I told you in the Q&A, we're going to be spending a lot of time doing maintenance work. I actually got a check engine light yesterday for a random misfire on cylinder 2, and chances are, because I'm tuned, the plugs are probably going. I wanted to include this in my 20K maintenance video anyway, so we're just going to kind of go ahead and do that. I got the NGK laser iridium plugs, and then I got a EcoGuard filter for the cabin. So we're actually going to start in the engine. I let my engine run a little bit so that way everything can be a little bit warm. You don't want to do this when it's very cold because a lot of the parts are going to be harder to take off. Pretty much all you're going to need to take off the plugs are either a small screwdriver or a small pry tool. You're going to need a 3/8 inch ratchet. You're going to need a 6-inch extension for that. You're going to need a spark plug socket and a 10mm socket. I'd recommend that the 10mm is deep socket. It just makes things a little bit easier, but it is not necessary, just so you know. Yeah, but let's get started here because we got a lot to do. This is the cabin filter that I picked up. It is a EcoGuard. I got it off Amazon. It was actually pretty cheap, and I picked these up from Modded Euros on their website. So in order to start the spark plug removal, we're going to pop this off. To get started, we're actually going to remove all of the sensors on the sides over here. So we're actually going to pop this out, and we should be able to push this in and remove this. We're also going to remove this sensor here. There's also this sensor up here that needs to come off. So actually be easier if I take this. Sensor up top from the blow-off valve needs to come off. And then these things are a pain in the butt, but each one of these sensors back here need to come off as well. So you actually need to lift on all the actuators. You got to lift the little tab and pop each one of them off. That's why it's good to have a little screwdriver like this one handy to be able to do this job. Next step is to remove all the ground wires. So you actually have to take like some needle nose pliers and hold the bottom nut while you loosen up the top one, because you don't want that stud to spin out. And I like to loosen them up and just take them off by hand. Magnetic tray holders do come in handy when you're doing this kind of work, and these things should slide right off. If you have a bag removal tool to take this off, it'd be a lot easier, but I don't have one, so we're just gonna kind of go with the flow here. Now we can come back in here and loosen these up. Pulling these things out, and this is why I asked you guys to make sure that the car was running a little bit prior to you doing this. You don't want it to be extremely hot, but you do want it to be warm to the touch, because these things pretty much just wiggle out of there and you pull out, and it's much easier to remove that rubber piece if the engine is warm. Otherwise you're going to have a hard time trying to pry things, and chances are you'll probably break some plastics that are around the engine. Now it's pretty much just putting in the deep socket into the holes for the cylinders and pulling out each of these spark plugs, and then taking a look at them and see what they look like, because I'm kind of curious, because I did get a misfire on cylinder 2, and I'm wondering if it's because one of these are no good. So yeah, so I can tell you right now why I was misfiring. This is cylinder 1, black. This is cylinder 2, really black. The white tips aren't even like cream, they're just like brown. Ugly, ugly. Every cylinder is terrible. So we're gonna put on the new plugs. These things come pre-gap, but I'm gonna double check the gap. I just have to run upstairs and grab the gapping tool. This is what a gapping tool looks like, guys. You have a bunch of numbers at the bottom. Each spark plug comes with their own recommendations as per like factory. So these NGKs are actually 0.024, so that's what we're going to check. We're going to make sure that when we slide this in here, it matches up to 0.024. We're going to move the gap and we're going to slide it over. and just twist it back and forth till you get it in place. There we go. So we are at 0.024 right there. This actually wasn't pre-gapped, so this is exactly why you want to make sure that you guys go through this stuff, because a lot of times they're not going to come pre-gapped, and that's not going to be good because you're going to be running the wrong spark heat temperatures, and you could screw something up, especially if you're tuned. So make sure you guys double check your gapping on your spark plugs. I actually already put one in, but you're going to set them aside and you're going to start sliding them in one at a time. Now, one pro tip, not really pro tip, but just prevention tip, I would say, is make sure that you put the spark plug in the spark plug socket itself and make sure that it doesn't move when you're sliding it down, and don't try to torque anything down until you have by hand made sure that all the threads are going in 100%. These things don't need to be super tight. I don't remember the torque. I actually just hand tighten them down every single time. I've never had an issue. So, but if you guys want to do the torque settings, that's cool too. Alright, so we got all our plugs back in, so it's pretty much just a reverse order. Just make sure you reconnect everything that you need to reconnect. Make sure that everything's tight, and also make sure that all the solenoids in the back, you plug them in order, because if you don't, you can have misfires all over the place. So make sure that you guys do that correctly. Other than that, I think we're pretty much done here. So we are going to move to doing the cabin filter, because my AC is smelling a little moofy. If you don't know what moofy is, that's like a wet sock smell. And if you ask me what the name, where the name came from, my girlfriend kind of made it up and it's kind of stuck, and I thought it was a real word at one point. So yeah, so it smells moofy. You pretty much want to do is you want to open your glove box, and then you have like these two tabs under here, and you're going to push them in as you pull down on the glove box itself, because you want it to release from the top. And it should slide out this way like this. Also be careful, you don't want to break that thing over there. What you need is this box back here. There's actually a few tabs. Wow, that was a pain in the butt. So once you take that little bracket off, you have your filter back here. Paul says to make sure that you remember the orientation. So you see these little arrows over here pointing down? That's what you want. And look at this filter. This thing is filthy! 20 miles in. 20,000 miles in. Alright, so let's get the new filter. Has the arrow again pointing down. And we're just going to slide it up in there. You know, I read somewhere that if you leave the recirculating air thing on and your car's like off, it collects moisture or something in if it rains outside, even if your car's off and you're like upstairs just chilling at your house. And that could make your car smell moofy, which I don't necessarily like. That's going to be part 1 of the 20K mile series. Stay tuned on Wednesday for part 2 of this video, which is going to include the oil change, the tire rotations, checking for brakes, and topping off a lot of the fluids. So thank you very much for watching. This took about an hour or so, an hour and a half. So an hour and a half to prevent issues on your vehicle. I'll definitely take it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.